LSD, use it sparingly. Hi there, Sage Candid of VO2 Max Productions here with another training talk. Today we're going to talk about HIIT training and LSD. And I want to thank you first for all the comments and feedback on my other training talk videos. Feel free to leave more training talk topics below and be sure to vote. I did see the one about supplementation in distance running, and I'm going to get to that pretty soon here. But I just want to throw this one out here real quick because we've been seeing a lot of posts on it lately, and it kind of reminded me of some of the training theories that I wanted to bring together in this training talk video. And so we have two ends of the spectrum basically, high intensity interval training, HIIT, and the LSD, and this is my talk on them. So when I think of HIIT training, I think of CrossFit, and that's really not the ideal thing to think about, because obviously we're applying this to distance running training, and a lot of this has overlap with weightlifting. It has overlap into explosive exercises for all types of other sports that I admit I know nothing about. But I do know something about the principles of training and what it does to the body, and how people are kind of branding this name into an exercise or sets of exercises, intervals basically, that have been around for decades and decades and decades. And in relation to the sport of distance running, I think some of this could be a little confusing for some people, and that's why I wanted to clarify it, hopefully through this video here. And you know, with HIIT training, if you're not familiar with it, we got really high intensity intervals. A lot of times for runners now, they're suggesting, you know, hill sprints, 200-meter repeats on the track with a controlled rest interval, and obviously doing this again and again and again. But other videos we're seeing are very dynamic types of drills, anything from jumping exercises to butt kicks to skipping and some other dynamic types of activities. But what we see a lot with HIIT training is, you know, a lot of claims that it's going to burn more belly fat, it's going to amp up your metabolism, which is also very true, I will say. You do something really high intensity, you do an interval workout, and it's going to rev up your metabolism for the rest of the day. You lift weights, you're burning calories even way after the fact. So that is a good thing. And obviously if you want to burn more calories, some of that's going to be, you know, a lot of fat you're going to burn through. And on the flip side, if you go out and run twice a day, you rev your metabolism a little bit better as well, versus just running once a day. So you have to take all this into consideration. And if you really want to, you know, get chiseled six-pack abs or you know, really get lean and cut, I think the other thing to look at is probably just your diet. Diet alone would be a separate other talk, but diet and exercise together, of course, are going to give you the best benefits for your energy and time that you're investing, as well as money if you have a gym membership or you're trying to buy healthy food. So you know, that end of the spectrum, high intensity interval training, I think there's some great things about it in terms of building flexibility through doing some dynamic exercises or doing some really high intensity sprint-like type of work. You are stimulating your fast twitch muscle fibers. You are opening up your hips in a good range of motion if you're doing them correctly with good form and you're not getting too tired. And then the final thing is you are inducing quite a bit of anaerobic component, which, you know, you could lead to getting some pretty acidic blood, some pretty high lactate concentration, lactic acid buildup, which is going to be good and bad. And I'll get to this when I bring together LSD into it at the end of the talk here. But obviously, depending on what event you're training for, if you're training for an 800 meters or mile event, you need more of that lactic acid buffering component and that all-out speed, for that matter, in your training to really peak. Whereas if you're a marathon or ultra-marathon runner, you probably don't need that as much. You're not fighting off lactic acid really in the marathon. You're trying to just get through the wall and not burn out all your glycogen. So, you know, specificity of training there. And then the other thing we see, and I'll tie this in with my running economy video. I'll link to it there, and I'll also link to it at the end of this talk. The secret to success is what I call it, running economy on all variable surfaces at variable speeds. Is that by doing the speed work, by doing fast intervals, whether they're 10-second hill sprints, alactate, with a longer recovery, or they're doing 200 meters on a track, 200 meter repeats at a very specific pace, like mile race pace or 800 meter race pace, or even doing you know, dynamic bounding exercises, you can increase your stride rate, increase your stride frequency, increase your stride length, sorry, and then also develop that musculature and that power where you're reducing your foot ground contact time and you're becoming more of a well-rounded athlete. So it's going to improve your running form, which hopefully translates into improving running economy at all sub-maximal speeds. So all of a sudden 5K pace feels a lot more comfortable because you did these sprints, and all of a sudden you could do that a lot easier. So in terms of that, it's very useful. Now, this has been around for a long time. I said, again, it goes back decades and decades and decades. We see distance runners, Sebastian Coe comes to mind. Peter Coe, his dad coached him, and in Better Training for Distance Runners, you see a lot of his speed influence, heavy intervals, go to the track 3 times a week, and obviously intensity for him led to success, especially at 1500 to 800 meters. Now, you do that too much, too often, you're gonna literally burn out. Burn out mentally because it's very excruciating and painful, but also burn out mainly physically, and this mainly happens just within the season, but you burn out physically because you've induced all this lactic acid from these high intensity intervals, and they start destroying your aerobic enzymes. So any endurance that you've built up with these aerobic enzymes, they start to not function as well. And so you get a nice peak, maybe you're running really well for a month or two, but eventually, if you don't reestablish base, if you don't do some more moderate lactate threshold workouts and other long runs and easy runs, and then take a break to reset the system, you're just not going to be able to hold that peak fitness for very long. The lactic acid will catch up with you, and you will start nosediving in your performance, your race performances. That could even happen just from overtraining before a single race. So it could be a very disastrous effect there. So the key here, I guess, is balance. Now, this will take us into our other end of the spectrum, where I'm going to start from the slow end, so to speak, with LSD. So with LSD, long, slow distance, also been around for decades and decades and decades. And, you know, you see these advocates, oh, you know, I don't want to run with pain, I just want to go out and run easy all the time, and that'll get me to the finish line of a marathon. Well, it probably will. It's a great idea to build up your mileage and not get injured from an overuse injury because you're running at a slower velocity. It's a great way to build your aerobic system and to burn fat very efficiently as a fuel. Now, does going out and running 10 miles, say I go out and run 10 miles at 8-minute mile pace versus running it at 7-minute mile pace, you know, how many more calories did I burn at 7-minute at the faster, higher intensity pace? Probably hardly any more. It's not really a measure of that intensity for me, 8-minute mile pace, 7-minute mile pace. It's a very marginal difference in intensity. The work output's still the same. I move my body 10 miles, and it doesn't matter if it took me 80 minutes or 70 minutes, even though with 80 minutes I was exercising 10 minutes longer, I still probably burned about the same number of calories. And so long, slow distance, there's a lot of truth that, you know, it's not gonna amp up your metabolism quite as fast as high intensity interval training would. Now, you could cover a lot more distance though with the long slow distance, and obviously doing a super long run is going to be very beneficial and very specific to training for a marathon or an ultra marathon, but it's also going to give you that skeletal muscular strength that's going to allow you to be able to do shorter, faster intervals later. And this is applicable to milers or half milers or 5K, 10K runners. So starting off from the slow end of the spectrum, we see programs that say, you know, just go out and run at a conversational pace all the time. Now, you don't want to fall into the rut of doing that, you know, the same long distance, moderate long distance slog every day. You could do that. It's very enjoyable, actually, if you just want to run for the sake of it. But if you want to really start improving some of your times maybe at race distances, or you want to see kind of what your potential is in the sport, to do that you're going to need a blend of these two ends of the spectrum. And obviously connector type of workouts in between would be the lactate threshold or tempo run workouts. And I'll link to that video there, my talk on doing the 20-minute tempo run. Jack Daniels coined that duration, basically 20-minute tempo run, lactate threshold session. I'll also link to this at the end of the video. But you're merging these two things together, and any successful training program, distance running training program nowadays, any successful coach is going to have to be blending these two systems together. And it's very, very Arthur Lydiard based. You look up his stuff, his periodization building the aerobic base with a lot of steady miles, but also doing some hill reps in there, you know, doing strides, doing some fast work as you're building that base, doing steady state lactate threshold up-tempo runs, and then putting the icing on the cake, so to speak, with the more anaerobic influence, some very specific speed intervals that do induce lactic acid and capitalize on all that strength that you've built up in the aerobic system. And so that is what allows you to peak. And mixing those ingredients all together at the right times in the right proportions is really the key to success and really the secret to a successful training program. And obviously some of that needs to be individualized. Some of that is very specific to the event or events that you're training for, as well as your timeline. So very simple but very complicated at the same time. And again, it's really a balance of things. And you know, if you're doing a bunch of slow, steady miles, maybe Moffatone method, going by a special heart rate reserve number, there's no variation in, you know, what you're doing. You can do that for a while, but until you start inducing a new stimulus in your training, maybe inducing some speed work, you're not going to get any of that super compensation to allow your body to basically jump up to that next plateau of fitness, and it's not going to allow you to reach your potential. Likewise, if you're always focused on the short anaerobic stuff, you're never going to be able to build that aerobic base up enough. You're not going to have the endurance to really have a lasting, sustainable season in the sport or have consistent performances. And if you don't have a relatively high mileage base before you do all the interval work, eventually you're also going to plateau, and so you're not going to be able to reach that next level. So it's a blending of the two sides of the spectrum. It's not just LSD, it's not just interval training, and especially not just HIIT. Maybe, you know, if you're in the CrossFit games or, you know, you want to be good at weightlifting, that could be beneficial. But if you want to be a good distance runner, you need to have some long, slow distance. You need to have your in-between tempo run, up-tempo runs, and lactic threshold workouts, and then you need to have some VO2 max workouts, and then you need to have maybe a little anaerobic component. Obviously more if you're a miler or 800 meter runner. But that's really my rant today on HIIT training versus LSD. Feel free to subscribe if you like these training talk videos. I try to do one at least every week. Again, comment below with future training talk topics, ideas that you might have, and give them a thumbs up so it catches my attention and I might consider it for a next video. And also stay tuned for my new series, Training for an OTQ, training for the Boston Marathon. That's coming up in 4 weeks, so I'm going for that now. But thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate all the views and support and feedback. I wish you the best in all your training and hope you're getting out there and enjoying your running as well. But thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.